Now you probably can't see my amazing artwork, but this is the spire / wormhole / control center. Spire is a stabilization and processing hub for the entire psychic network. So break that down, it's not just a prison and it's not just symbolic, it's like it's where the minds are held, where emotional energy is routed to. All of it is just going straight to the control center, and that's how the system just stays coherent. So all these minds, so like the children, so all the children, you know, there was a constant question in season 5, like, why children, like, and he says because they're the easily shaped, they're so malleable, and he's using those minds in order to power this wormhole. And why do you think I say wormhole? Okay, Mr. Clark, I'm sure many people have spotted this foreshadowing. Mr. Clark, love that guy. Wish he was my science teacher. Though I had nice science teachers, not gonna lie. Well, a few. Anyways, still would love him as my science teacher. He explained what wormholes are. Wormholes can connect distant points without crossing the space. It allows travel between times, galaxies, dimensions. But it is theoretical because it's wildly unstable. It collapses instantly and it needs immense energy to hold open. So what is Vecna doing differently? He's using human minds as anchors. He's using children because they're malleable and have high psychic conductivity, because they easily adapt compared to adults. They don't necessarily fight their environment, they accept altered rules as normal. And because Henry appeared as, Mr. What's-It, he offered protection, safety, kindness, attachment before fear. He built that cage he built the cage after the bond. That's what predators do. So that emotional pain will come later after the attachment and the trust. I mean, this is different from Will because that system didn't exist yet. Upside Down wasn't fully formed, and he didn't industrialize the process like he's doing right now. He was a prototype case. He was physically displaced, he was conscious, and he was not integrated to a control center. So that's why he remembers survival as visions. He doesn't describe a mind prison, that's why his trauma shows up later as possession. Because he doesn't really talk about his time in the Upside Down as much. So that's why he remembers it so much as possession. So he's not a battery. He wasn't a battery, he was a map. So instead of one big gate ripping open and collapsing, he's creating a living wormhole network. That's why the kids are being taken so fast. That's why the structure looks organic. That's why Will's drawing looks like this, like a hourglass funnel throat kind of thing. The spires, because I think it's individual, each one's right. It isn't where Vecna thinks, it's where the system stays alive. And that also can explain why freeing minds weaken everything. And again, using children because they're still forming their own internal maps identity. It's still forming. You know, they're easily susceptible and easily adaptable. You know, it doesn't make them weak, actually. It makes them, they're just easier to adapt to things. It makes them ideal anchors for the system. Alright. I kind of want to like create like a, on top of it, like Mr. Clark's symbol. Let's do that. No, but it actually did get me thinking, like, what is the Mind Flayer's motive now? Now that we've covered all of this. Because does it feel like the Mind Flayer wants destruction? But more like permanence. It doesn't like growth, it doesn't like unpredictability, it doesn't like change. You know, it wants a world that keeps running, but it never becomes anything new. People keep living their worst every single day. It doesn't necessarily want to end the world. It wants to freeze it. It wants a reality where it never has to change. That's just my view. I don't know. It just wants to keep people like stuck, you know? That's the way it has its permanent influence, you know? That's the way it can psychically dominate. I used to think it, like, when the Mind Flayer wants is like to kind of kill everybody. I mean, they did say that in the show, but at the same time, it does feel like it wants to like freeze the world, and not necessarily like an actual time freeze, but a world where nothing actually changes, nothing fundamentally changes, when no one grows past trauma and no one escapes. No one escapes the system. No one. And once they're captured, that's it. That's who they are. Identity is fixed. They're done. They've just up there. They can't grow anymore. Something like that, you know? Like, that's why the Upside Down is stuck on a date. That's why Vecna loops memories. That's why victims relive moments endlessly. And I think what the Mind Flayers also realize, how mind absorption is much more powerful than possession. That's why, like, I think it realized that, you know, because possession is temporary, inefficient, requires constant effort, and minds resist. Versus, for example, Billy, versus Beckner's newer method is like psychological capture, identity erosion, just integration into the system. That you become a system, you cannot get out. Like, the more people he has, the stronger the system will get. And this is enough to start its plan. Start freezing the world. says to Mike, like what Vecna says to Will, it's really interesting, and how it was something along the lines of, minds like Will, like you, don't belong in this world. And he's not saying that he's broken, he's saying that he doesn't fit in a world that's built on rules, built on time, and just entertainment, just pretending. He's emotionally attuned, he's empathetic, you know, all of these traits that aren't weaknesses, they're absolute strengths, especially when it's used right. And these minds threaten rigid systems, whether it's human or aliens. So Vecna's solution isn't to destroy them, it's to remove them from the world and keep them inside the system it has created. Preserved, static, safe, trapped. And that's not mercy, that's archival. And I think what's really important here is to realize, like, characters like Will, they deserve so much. You know, they're not typically written that much, because seen as sensitive, seen as empathic, you know, emotionally attuned is like seen as a weakness. To feel things deeply, to be seen as a weakness. Like, that shouldn't be seen like that anymore. We shouldn't have to feel like we have to pretend and put a tough exterior in order to, you know, feel safe, or you know, pretend, or like to guard our emotions. We shouldn't have to do that in order to live in this world. Because we live in a system that does that, we don't see a lot of characters like Will. No. Especially guys as well. So it's just really important to have him as a character, and to show that it's not a weakness, it's a strength. To own it without drowning in it. To actually claim that as part of who you are, and being proud of that, is something that we definitely need more in storytelling, definitely what we need more in media, because that offers connection, and we need connection, and we need unity more than ever. And things don't stop changing, we don't stop changing, we may still be who we are, but we don't stop changing and growing and learning. That's exactly what Vecna hates. Because you guys deserve a visual summary, here is one that you hopefully can take away from this video. So this is the whole system, okay? And then dimension X, you know, wrong thing. Dimension X feeds the mind flayer, the predator. Vecna is the interface for the mind flayer. The upside down, so all the spores, all the vines, and the spires. This is a physical layer where everything is connected. And people become nodes. Because their emotions are stuck. People are stuck in emotional loops. People are stuck in isolation. Will is the anchor, L is the bridge. The bridge between worlds. If you can see that. Okay? Again, this is such like bad angles, but guys, I'm not professional yet. Okay? Not a professional yet. So, this is the whole system, okay? But the system collapses when emotional loops break. Isolation turns into connection, and the bridge is used by choice and not fear. So, if my theory is correct, then the final conflict wouldn't really be about closing the gates or killing Vecna. It's about whether the world stays open, shared, messy, unfinished, or whether one consciousness gets to decide how reality feels like for everyone. Because the Mind Flayer doesn't hate humanity for being chaotic. It hates that people keep changing. And honestly, like I said before, I love how the characters who matter the most, they are the ones who never fully settle. Because maybe the point isn't to arrive somewhere. Maybe it's just to keep becoming.